Let's start with a very interesting Reddit story from Eddie Baby Abel. So 35 people walk into a pub. Sadly, this isn't a setup for a joke. TLDR at the end. So this happened a couple of years back in a pub I was working at. I worked the bar at this pub, which was pretty popular, especially on sunny days, as we had a lot of outdoor seating and a pretty huge beer garden. Now, the story takes place one exceptionally hot summer Sunday. For those of you who have the joy of not being all that familiar with our tea and crumpet society, I'll enlighten you as to why this is a pain for working in a pub. Firstly, the moment the sun blesses our sodden grey land with its presence, we British come out of our thatched caves to bask in its glow, like the lizard people our royal family is. This subsequently also means everyone had the exact same though of let's go have a pint at the pub and sit in the sun. Yay for bartending. The other noteworthy point here is that on Sunday, a roast is had. Beef, lamb, chicken or pork with roasted potatoes, veggies, gravy and Yorkshire puddings. All of which is wonderful unless you have to spend 2 hours cooking it. With that out of the way, this particular Sunday, we were full, and I mean full. Bar 4 or 5 people deep, the 100 plus tables all double booked for turnover, and I found myself without a moment's respite between pouring drinks and telling people we were fully booked. During this manic rush, I spot a bit of a commotion outside and see a group of roughly 30-35 people, including screaming kids walking through the courtyard, ignoring everyone, and into the beer garden. Once my colleague and I had thinned down the numbers at the bar substantially, I told him I was going to walk past to see what the huge group was doing. Anyone that's worked with real-life people, of course, know that people suck, hence why I just wanted to walk past and avoid interaction. Also, it's a pet peeve of mine when people just sit themselves down, ignoring all the staff, and expecting us to accommodate them without even the courtesy of mentioning to someone that they're here. So I take a step past the threshold of the bar, always dangerous, and that day a choice I regretted, and walk through the beer garden collecting empty glasses as I go. As I near the area, the group has settled in. As far away from the building as possible, I might add, I avoid eye contact at all costs. You're not going to come say hi, then I can't see you. Walking past the group, I am spotted by a very angry woman, the alpha Karen if you will, snapping her fingers at me to try and get my attention as I tried to get away. She stormed up to me and stared me dead in the face. "Excuse me? We've been waiting here for the last 15 minutes and no one has come to give us menus. What the hell are you all doing?" I'll admit I was momentarily in shock as the group had to walk through the courtyard and must have seen the crowds of people and stressed waiters everywhere. "I'm sorry, madam, but I had no idea you were here. Did you speak with anyone to let us know?" Then what I saw was a rage build just below her plasticized skin. Yes, I spoke with the redhead. No one that worked there was a redhead. "Well, anyway, I want some menus, we're starving." I looked past her and asked how many they were. "We're 36 people. That's not a problem, is it?" she said, without so much as a hint of understanding why this was ridiculous. "Well, yes, actually, that's quite a lot for a walk-in. And as you probably saw on your way in, we're extremely busy. I'm afraid we have no tables available, and we don't serve food in the beer garden. You'll have to try your luck at getting a table in the courtyard. But I can't imagine you'll be able to find enough seating for the 36 of you, and I simply can't hold tables for you turning other guests away. The reality is that I could, but simply didn't want to." She stared at me for a moment, then said, "You don't serve food in the beer garden, or you won't serve me food in the beer garden." "No, madam, the establishment does not serve food in the beer garden." "Ugh, fine. Look, can we just have chips then? For the kids? They're starving." I thought about it for a moment, deciding if I was really willing to put up with this, or if I should just say no and send them on their way. Against my better judgment, I said, "Okay," but they would have to sit in the courtyard once the tables were available, and asked roughly how many portions of chips they would be wanting. She replied, 6, and I said, "That's probably fine, but she'll have to go inside to order." This did not sit well with her, and she started to get very cross. On my way back in, I swung by the kitchen to let them know what's up and to expect 6 chip orders, but not to rush them because the woman was an enormous pain. I get back to the bar and it's busy again, 3-4 people deep, so I immediately jump in and start pouring pints. A few minutes later I hear, "Oh, for God's sake, this is ridiculous," and immediately know who it is. This tiny, angry woman pushes her way through the crowd and snaps her fingers at me to get my attention. "You, I want to order my chips, and hurry it up, the kids are hungry." "Okay, I'll put them on now. 6 portions, correct?" "No, 17. Sufficient to say I was bewildered. "Madam, that's not what we discussed. I'll have to see if the kitchen can even do that. We're very busy." "We'll go on then. Run along to the kitchen," she barked. As I was about to, I hear, "Actually, can you make it 35? "Madam, I'll be honest with you. There's no way you'll get them all at once. It's simply too many for the fryer. It'll have to be in batches, and it's going to take a while as there are more pressing orders ahead of you. You will also need to pay up front." "I don't care. Bring them one by one if you have to. As soon as one is ready, bring it out." Bingo. I went and spoke to the chef explaining what was going on. Rude woman, many chips, one by one. He laughed, and we decided to do exactly as she asked. Bring on the MC. So despite being very, very busy, as soon as one portion of chips was ready, I took it out. One portion, only one. She was not pleased. "What the hell is this? I said 35 portions, not one." As I explained to you inside, Madam 35 portions is simply far too many for our fryers to handle, and there is a substantial number of other orders ahead of you. I had to try very hard to hide my shit-eating grin at this point. But, what the hell do you expect me to do with this? Perhaps you could have 1 chip each per portion. And I swiftly turned and walked away. Following this, every 10-15 minutes, I would take out one more and only one more portion of chips. The group. By about portion 12, they had been there several hours and were fed up. They tried to complain to the manager, but she was so rude and disrespectful to myself, my manager, and other staff members, that he dismissed her, stating that I had explained clearly to her that we were very busy, and she herself, and told me to bring them out one portion at a time, if need be. They left very angry, and we had 23 portions of chips paid for, that staff got to enjoy later on. TLDR. Very rude woman with group of 35 expects us to feed them on a very hot busy Sunday when the pub is overflowing. Asks for 6, then 17, then 35 portions of chips. They come out one portion every 15 minutes until they eventually leave, and we get to eat the 23 portions of chips they didn't wait for. Edit. Spelling. Also, a few people have mentioned they feel bad for the rest of the group. Well, I didn't mention it because it wasn't really relevant to the MC, but they were all pretty rude and finger-snappy. For anyone worried about the starving kids, they got the first bowl of chips, covered most of the table in ketchup, smashed 3 or 4 chips into the table, and left at least a 1/3 of the chips. I don't think they were as close to death as Alpha Karen tried to preach. Also, thanks for the awards, everyone. The next story from Sure Fine Whatever. 67? Thank you for your input, Karen. Or how I did exactly what the HR lady told me to. Hello, everyone. First, I would like to point out that I've created a new Reddit account just so that I could post this story. I didn't want to use my regular account as I would like to stay as anonymous as possible, and my post history plus this story will make that difficult. Second, just so you know, English is not my first language, so please excuse me if there are any mistakes. And lastly, this story happened earlier this year, but the real consequences came last week. That's why I've decided to share it now. The context: I, 35F, live in a big city in Western Europe. After graduating college, I was hired as an office assistant in a big company. Let's call it Happy Place. I did my last internship as a student there, and it went so well that I got hired just a few weeks after getting my master's degree. Over the next 10 years, I worked my way up from an assistant to office manager to head of one of the biggest departments. I was not paid a lot of money, but it was above average, and the benefits were great. But the main reason I stayed for so long was the people who worked there. Over the year, I've made quite a few friends there, and by the year 2020, I was one of the most experienced people working in Happy Place. My colleagues often came to me for an advice about how to do this or that, and I also had a great relationship with the big bosses. And the cherry on top was that I had the best boss someone can hope for. Let's call her Maggie. Maggie was 10 years older than me, and she was Wonder Woman. She is nice, professional, cool, helpful, and has a heart of gold. I've worked with her during my whole time at Happy Place in the last 4 years. She was my direct supervisor. I loved her. Then, in 2020, a few things happened almost at the same time, and over the course of 6 months, Happy Place turned into Sad Place. First, the company hired a new HR lady, Karen. She was the worst. She treated everyone below her level of responsibilities, which, as pretty much 99% of the staff, as if they were lesser people, talked down to everyone and constantly made changes in the HR policies. She implemented quite a few new rules which lead to us losing some of the benefits that we liked, like free lunches, paid time off to go to the doctor's office during office hours, etc. But the CEO of the company trusted her for some reason, and soon he stopped taking meeting with the staff, making Karen the only person who could make decisions regarding the staff, which meant that no one could actually complain about her, and we slowly started feeling helpless. Second, Maggie was promoted to a different field, the one she actually wanted to work in, so I cannot be mad at her for leaving, and she got replaced by Susan as my new supervisor. Susan was cool, but she was my age and with less experience, which did not make much sense. So even though on paper she was the one in charge, I was the one constantly explaining to her how things worked and what needed to be done, while she took the credit. And lastly, COVID. Our line of work was highly impacted by the pandemic, so the whole year 2020, I was working under an enormous amount of stress, taking almost no vacation time, doing my job and some of Susan's job, as at some point she went on a medical leave, and some of my co-workers' jobs, as some colleagues cracked under the tension and quit, but no one got hired to replace them. But despite all of the hard work, I did not receive any pandemic-related bonus, which was weird since some of my co-workers let it slip that they got a €1,000 bonus for achievements during the pandemic. The compliance. So given all the events of 2020, in January 2021, I've decided that enough was enough. When it was time for my annual review, I've decided that I would negotiate better conditions for myself, because as much as I loved my job and the people I've worked for, I couldn't keep working so much for so little pay. As Susan was still on a medical leave, Karen was the one who did my annual review, despite the fact that I've only met her a few times and we've never directly worked together. In preparation for the meeting, I've made a list of the things I've been putting up with and a list of reasons why I should get a slight pay bump. I was asking for a 15% pay increase, but was happy to accept a 10%. It was not about the money. It was about knowing that there was at least a chance that management valued me as an employee and that I was not just some sucker who did so much for not even a thank you. After making my case to Karen and carefully explaining to her what my job was and what I was actually doing, I asked her the dreaded question. She looked at me, smiled and said, "OP, I appreciate everything you've been doing for the company and we value you as an employee. But your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much." I was speechless. I admit, I was so angry and hurt that I felt tears coming up to my eyes. But I took a deep breath, calmed myself and said, "Thank you for your input, Karen. But I cannot keep working in these conditions. It's not worth it." Karen rolled her eyes and replied, "Then you can quit, but I will be sorry to see you go." And quit I did. You see, there were two things Karen did not know. First, as explained, I was a highly valued employee with a great reputation and over 10 years of experience in the field. In our field, reputation is important, and for the last 2 years, I've been receiving job offers from competitors. I always refused because I loved working for Happy Place. But since the events of 2020, I started taking interviews, checking what else was out there. And just before my meeting with Karen, I did an interview with Cool Company, who offered me a 60% raise to do the same job as I did for Happy Place. Second, remember how I said I took almost no vacation days in 2020? So by January of 2021, I had over 2 months of paid leave available. I checked with the HR, not Karen, the week before my annual review, and they confirmed to me in writing that I was free to take my vacation days whenever I wanted. So, I did exactly what Karen told me to do. I quit. I put in my 2 months' notice and took my 2 months' vacation, which meant that I came to work for only 1 day, to clean out my office and say goodbye, before leaving for good. I felt bad because I left so many of my colleagues in a really bad position since they now had to do my job. But they all assured me that they understood and that they would have done the same thing. After my 2 months paid vacation, I started working at Cool Company and I've been here ever since. The aftermath. I kept in touch with a few friends from Happy Place and they regularly informed me of what was going on over there. It seems that me quitting was the push that many of my co-workers needed to also make the final leap and quit. As I said, the conditions went from great to bad since Karen took office. Also, the fact that I quit so abruptly got the attention of the CEO as we had a good relationship. He asked Maggie, who was aware of the whole story with Karen, about it, and she told him the truth. About me not getting the COVID bonus, about Karen speaking down to staff members, about her telling me to quit if I wanted to. The CEO finally opened his eyes and launched an investigation into Karen's actions. He personally did interviews with some staff members and heard stories about her from people from many different departments. He also investigated the COVID bonus story, and it turns out she only gave the COVID bonus to her friends from different departments and a very generous one to herself. Plus, since I've quit, no one was actually able to do my job, and the fact that Karen was responsible for me leaving made her responsible for the consequences. So after reviewing everything, the CEO decided to terminate Karen's contract. Rumour has it the whole staff of Happy Place celebrated this joyous occasion. The cherry on top. Last week, my boss at Cool Company walked into my office and said, "OP, you know Jen from HR is retiring soon, right? We did interviews to replace her, and one of the candidates is Karen. She seems competent but asks for quite a lot of money. You and her work together, right? What's she like? Do you think she deserves to be paid more than we initially offered?" I said, "Boss, you have a few minutes? Great. Let me tell you a story." After hearing my very honest opinion of Karen, Boss Man laughed and said, "Okay, good to know. I think we will tell her that she is not the right fit for us. Thanks, OP." As soon as Boss Man left my office, I sent an email to my friend Laurie from HR, who was in charge of replying to candidates. I also told her the story and asked her to keep me informed if there is any development with the whole Karen applies to Cool Company thing. A few hours later, I got an email from Laurie. Turns out she copied me to her official reply to Karen. It read, "Dear Karen, thank you for your interest in working for Cool Company. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you that in our opinion, your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much." I brought Laurie a big chocolate cookie the next day. Thank you all for reading. Have a great day, and remember, don't let Karens ruin your sense of self-worth. Update. Hey guys, thank you for all your comments and support. I have a small update I thought you might want to know. The CEO from Happy Place approached me last week to ask me to come back and work for him. He offered me more money, but didn't really apologize for what he let happen to me and the entire team. I said no, because even though Karen is no longer there, things haven't really changed, at least not for the better. Almost all of the good people from that place have left for other opportunities since my departure, even those who have been there for 20 years. That includes my friend Maggie, who now works with me at Cool Company. I could not be happier. Judging by her LinkedIn page, Karen is still looking for work. Try to be lazy and get me to do your job. I'll let you fail.